Prologue. Delinet, August 28, 2018. Nice if the first human being on Mars could be a woman. An interview with Dutch astronaut and Mars traveller Johan Bakker by Alexandra Marino. I'm not afraid of getting lonely, Johan Bakker states. The 56-year-old Dutchman was the first of 4 international astronauts to hear that he will join the historic first manned mission to Mars. Because of Mars' gravity you'd need for a giant rocket to make the return journey. I'm good at being alone. Besides, I will keep in touch with everyone I know. Maybe I'll use social media like Delphi even more than I do now. And don't forget that 3 colleagues will join me. In one of only a handful of interviews granted by the Red Lion Planet organization, the Dutch company partnering with the European Space Agency on this one-way mission, I meet with Bakker in the canteen at the European Space Research and Technology Centre, ESTEC in Noordwijk, not far from the Dutch North Sea coast. The tanned and neatly shorn space traveller talks to me from the other side of the table. Although his eyes drift towards the window and the blue expanse of sky overhead, I have his full attention. I have nothing to lose. I have had a beautiful life in every respect. While others are anxiously waiting for their retirement, I am happy to sacrifice myself to science. When I tentatively suggest that while the first weeks on Mars will be the adventure to end all adventures, boredom will quickly strike, Bakker is fierce in response. Do you know how many people would have done anything to join this crew? More than 200,000 applied. Just imagine that amount. I am chosen. What's more, I am the only Dutchman to have made the selection. It's ironic that the Dutch find the one-way mission funny. But let me tell you something. The Red Lion Planet organization should remind us of that other great Netherlands enterprise. The Dutch East India Company. You're a bit touchy. You were tested thoroughly on stability and team spirit, weren't you? I tease. Bakker taps his finger on the tabletop, picks up his cappuccino cup and swallows the final blob of foam before he answers, "What I can't stand is journalists who are unwilling to accept that I have drawn a winning lottery ticket. I don't ask you to faint at my feet, but I would appreciate some understanding that you are talking to a man who has given up everything to advance mankind's exploration of this universe." Johan Bakker acts as though the only country to be sceptical of this curious one-way journey to the Red Planet is the Netherlands. In fact, NASA has publicly stated its opposition to shooting 4 people into space, never to return. That hasn't stopped the Americans from throwing their hat into the ring when it comes to figuring out a way to reach the Red Planet. The second man to walk on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, is known for his support of manned missions to Mars. He outlined his plans for a rather complicated shuttle service between Earth and Mars's moon, Phobos in his recent book mission to Mars. My vision for space exploration. Communication would be faster by several minutes, and the astronauts could operate robots to collect geological samples for study on Earth. The biggest advantage of the former American astronauts' plan. The interplanetarian travelers would be able to return home. I mention this to Bakker, who plays with a teaspoon, using it to scrape the last bit of cappuccino out of his cup. He notices me watching. During training sessions, I was taught to be thrifty. We need to take as little weight as possible. Every gram costs money. Recycling is the magic word in space travel. He licks his spoon clean between sentences before responding to my point. The problem with the Americans, that is to say, some of them, is that they believe in fairy tales against their better judgment, he continues. An astronaut is only an astronaut when he returns to his proud wife, and they embrace under the glare of his waiting public, preferably with rows of excited children cheering in the background. The Red Lion Planet mission goes against many American values and principles, so you can understand their skepticism. To begin with, most of the American candidates who applied to join this one-way trip have a husband or wife and, in many cases, children. Yet it is un-American to leave your relatives behind you forever to pursue your own dreams. An elderly married couple could get away with it, but a man leaving his young family? No way. But we will head for Mars with 2 well-trained men and 2 perfectly healthy women on board at least. Hopefully, the other 3 crew members will follow suit. Bakker's grey-blue eyes sparkle when he mentions his fellow crew members. I can't decide whether or not he expects me to probe him about the possibility of relationships developing up in space. It must be playing on his mind, But I don't want to come across as narrow-minded to this charismatic man, at least until the time is right. "Can I offer you something to drink?" he asks. "A green tea, please." I watch as the man who regards Estek as his home strides off to fetch refreshments. He has a commanding presence. It's easy to see why he was chosen from over 200,000 international applicants. Although he's not what you would call famous, despite his 20 years as a skilled astronaut, the guests at the other tables stare at him with curiosity. The girl behind the counter even blushes when Berger walks in her direction. "Do sit down, I'll bring your drink," I hear her say. "But the astronaut won't have it. Nothing wrong with my arms and legs," he replies. When he has taken his seat again, he looks at me in silence. I decide to make the most of the moment. It's almost as if he's begging for the question, "Have you made arrangements for possible affairs in space?" He lets out an exuberant laugh. "You're too cautious. Do you mean to ask whether sex on Mars is allowed?" Now it is my turn to suppress the blood I feel rising to my cheeks. André Kuipers and Wubbo Ockels have always maintained their silence on the subject. I respond in defence. "And do you know why?" I shrug my shoulders, straining the tea bag against the side of the cup to escape his steely gaze. I have known both these guys well. Wubbo sadly died. They were, and André still is, both sensible fellows who were not scared of discussing intimate matters in public. But the truth is they were forbidden. They were senior NASA astronauts. And NASA wants role models for young people. NASA wants old-fashioned heroes. Masturbating space travellers don't fit that image. My tea is in danger of stewing, but the pressure is now off and I continue navigating down this path. "Then what have you agreed on?" "Nothing at all. We'll wait and see. Would you have liked a cookie?" I shake my head. It wouldn't be a good idea to discuss this subject with my mouth full. You're receiving extensive training, so you're isolated from the world for months at a time. It must cause issues. Yes and no. Now it is Berger's turn to adopt a more cautious position. Of course, this situation has led to friendships, but the opposite has also occurred. 2 of the applicants even had a scrap. One of them had smuggled a bottle of vodka into the testing area. Strangely enough, those guys were Russian, he says with a wry smile, referring to 2 early candidates who were fired for misconduct, which, one can sympathise, was born out of a need to escape the crippling isolation. I follow Berger's gaze through the window to see a group of school children positioned in front of a multi-axis simulation trainer, a twisting chair that churns its rider in all directions to simulate disorientation and test for potential nausea. I have a tendency for sickness, but that didn't prove to be a problem for selection. An interesting matter, but I want to press ahead with the potential space soap opera just waiting to unfold on this one-way journey to the Red Planet. The mission could never have happened without funding from the television broadcast. You'll be followed by cameras day and night, your every move broadcast to the reality TV-loving folks back on Earth. It's likely they'll be just as excited about potential romance as they are about the massive strides taken towards advancing space exploration. Do you think that had something to do with the choice of 2 men and 2 women for this particular mission? Lack of excitement won't be an issue, Jonah shoots back. Every day on Mars will be different. There's so much to discover. What happens between a few middle-aged men and women is neither here nor there. Besides, I'm so glad we have women on the team. It would be nice if the first human being on Mars could be a woman, would it not? Of course, I agree. One step for womankind does have a certain ring to it, but he is avoiding the question. It's a pity you feel the need to defend yourself, I remark. I could understand this stance from an American, but from a liberal European, you are going to be there for the rest of your lives. Is it likely that children will be born on Mars? Berger roars with laughter, raising glances from the other guests in the canteen. A few seconds later, he is once again serious. I expect that won't be an issue during the first mission, maybe later. Bear in mind that every 2 years a new crew will arrive. After some decades, we'll have a genuine Martian community. It's quite possible that children will be born there, but it's more realistic to experiment with animals at this stage. The subject hadn't crossed my mind. Will you have animals on board during this first mission? We will definitely transport a colony of mice to Mars. Mice have the highest nutritional value in relation to their low weight. They reproduce quickly. We'll have meat, albeit in tiny quantities. We're also considering cultivating fish. As to underline his words, Berger takes a pen from his pocket and draws a fish on my notepad. He is not afraid to come close. Our hands touch for a brief moment. Let me broaden the question. Do you have no human ties to Earth? A deep wrinkle forms in the astronaut's forehead. My friends understand me. They have known me for so long. They know how important this is to me. I don't have many relatives left. I'm an only child and both my parents are dead. I was married for almost 10 years, but I lost my wife Simone in a traffic accident 5 years ago. She was a journalist at Indie Press. Simone was knocked down on her way to work. I feverishly dig my memory for Berger's bio. Did I overlook this tragic detail? Then, is your voyage to Mars an escape from your sorrow? Obviously, I have thought about that question, replies Berger. Simone knew it was my ultimate dream to visit the Red Planet. But the chance was so small, we never really talked about it. Our marriage was good, but we lived our own lives. I was often away for months at a time, in Houston or Star City. In that period, it was more of a phone relationship. It worked fine, though. It gave Simone the chance to really dive into her journalistic work. She never regarded it as a problem, at least she never said it was. The fact that we didn't have children made it easier for us in a sense. You speak rather rationally about an event in your life that must have had a deep impact. Berger grabs his pen again and draws a house next to the fish. Of course, I was very sad when Simone died, and I honestly don't know whether I would be able to undertake this mission if she was still alive. But there's no point addressing such hypothetical questions now. I was chosen as a Mars traveller after she died. It certainly makes the choice regarding whether to go or not a lot easier. Would it be possible that Red Lion Planet approached you because they knew of your circumstances? I realise I'm on precarious ground here, but as long as Berger doesn't quit, I'll go on, at the very least, because I want to understand what it is that moves this man. It's not impossible. In any case, it makes the possibility of going mad with homesickness rather more remote. I decide to try a different tack in my attempts to uncover what it is that makes Jonah Berger tick. What would your parents have thought about your emigration to another planet? My parents were idealistic hippies. They weren't interested in space travel. They regarded it as a waste of energy, throwing the public's money down the drain. My father used to say that the billions spent on travelling to the moon should be given to third world countries. They were especially against the Americans winning the race to the moon. Don't forget that during the same period, the US government was raising hell in Vietnam. But my parents loved me very much. I'm their only child. And as a youngster, I was completely obsessed with anything to do with space travel. In fact, my father and I watched the shadowy images that were beamed down from the moon during that night in 1969. He was silent throughout, but I could tell he was impressed. Eventually he said, "This is pretty spacey." That was the biggest compliment he could give to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. The time has come to wish this intrepid explorer well in his lengthy preparations for this mankind-changing mission. When we say goodbye, I ask whether we will see each other again. Give me your business card, and I will contact you as soon as I arrive. He only half jokes. The satellites that will guarantee a good Wi-Fi connection are almost ready for liftoff. Follow Jonah Berger on Astro Jonah.
You have just listened to the prologue of the book One-Way Trip to Mars by Johan Bakker. I can imagine you're curious to hear the rest of the story. I can certainly say that I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. It was exciting, moving, and funny all at once. The book is so well written that you don't need to go to Mars yourself to experience the journey.